Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be trying for you guys the original Old Charter 8-year-old. They discontinued the 8-year-old age statement back in January of 2014. There is a lawsuit now because they continue to use the age on the bottle, and I guess some people got confused. But it clearly says on this one aged 8 years, and on the others it just shows an 8. They do mention something about 8 seasons, and well, there's 4 seasons per year, but actually there's only 2 seasons per year because 2 seasons is that they're referring to distilling seasons, and there's only 2 of those per year. So you're looking at a 4-year-old. Because if it's less than a 4-year-old bourbon, they would be marked. They have to mark it on the back, less than 4 years old, how old the bourbon really is. So even though the Old Charter 8 is still probably a 4-year-old or older bourbon, it's probably not an 8-year-old bourbon anymore. These are still readily available in Kansas. Most small towns you can come across it. It's a 40% alcohol by volume. It is Buffalo Trace, 10% mash bill, the low rye mash bill they have. I forget what other lines are part of it. I think it's actually the #1 mash bill they use. So I think it's probably Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare. Don't quote me on all that. I don't know my Buffalo Trace products all that well to say that. Anyway, back to the bourbon itself. And I've had a fair amount of it. This is a 375. I go through it slowly. I have a little bit now and then, mostly when I do my bourbon for breakfast on Instagram. When I do those, then I usually hit it. 'Cause in the morning, it's pretty good. It really is. It works well with most breakfasts, I find. Especially with an omelet. Denver omelet. If I can speak. Denver omelet, especially. All right, we've already covered. It is 8 years old. It is 40% ABV. It is a medium, slightly dark amber honey color. It has a fairly good viscous coating on it, actually. The tears are starting to run now. The legs are starting to run now. They run thin. This is a subtle bourbon, I'm going to tell you right now. It's not a very strong, and I think it's why it's so appealing to a lot of people, because I don't know if this is the one that's on allocation out there. I think maybe it is. Some places where it's sold out, it's kind of hard to come by, I guess. Again, this is nothing, don't quote me on, but I know some liquor stores have mentioned they're having a hard time finding it. Don't. You definitely get the corn sweetness and the vanilla. It's got a light caramel note to it. Almost a molasses. Working into a molasses there. You get the corn sweetness. It's a light overall nose. There's a little bit of spirit burn. Just a little bit of wood putty of all weird things. I get a little wood putty on this one. It's just one of those strange notes that just when I smell this, I've used enough wood putty in my life that I'm very familiar with that smell. Vanilla comes up front. Caramel. There is a little bit of oak. Slightly warm. Sweet corn. There's a light spiciness. Nutmeg. Mostly just nutmeg. Maybe a little zing of a little white pepper in there. There's a little spirit burn. Not bad. And there's a savory note to this. That savory note carries right on into the finish. It's a medium to short finish. Doesn't carry very well. It's not watery. It's a little watery, but it's not like it's that's a wrong term. It's just a very thin finish, a very thin mouth coating. Finish is medium to short itself. The nutmeg hangs around, and the vanilla, and that corn sweetness, all the way through the finish. 40%. I'm going to start doing this more and more. I generally don't add water to it, so I'm only going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon. I will not add any more, because I added a 1/4 teaspoon the other day, and it just deconstructed it completely. Eighth of a teaspoon takes away all the spirit burn. Mostly vanilla and caramel, with the nutmeg still there. A little bit of that savory note. It doesn't hurt the finish. I know if I add a 1/4 teaspoon to this, just one more of those, it becomes a jumbled up mess. It's weird. It just almost literally deconstructs itself in a weird, not good way. This is a subtle bourbon, guys. This is not something you're going to drink that you're going to want to jump in and tear apart. This is something you can take fishing with you, whatever. Any sort of outdoor activity where you're going to sit down and want to enjoy a half pint. And honestly, it's good enough to do on its own. I can't speak to the comparison to the new 8, so I don't have a bottle of the new 8, and I have no desire to buy a bottle of the new 8, because I'm afraid this is pretty much borderline. I don't want to get let down. This is not borderline. Actually, this is good enough. This is a decent drinking bourbon in all reality. I mean, it's not great. Don't go into this expecting a comparison to, the last one did 4 Roses single barrel. This is not that. This is not that at all. This is not Wild Turkey 101. This is not in that realm. This is something totally different. It's still got all the bourbon notes. It's still got the sweetness, the nutmeg. It's not hot and spicy, but it's a good solid pour. It can be just a little bit zingy, but you add just a few drops of water, it takes that all out. So I don't find no problem with it. For a subtle bourbon, I'm going to give it a score of 82 out of 100. I think that's more than fair for this bourbon. And if you like Buffalo Traces, especially their #1 mash bill, and you find this, especially just at $3.75, I strongly suggest you get it and give it a try. I think you'll like it. I know I do. Well, I've said all I need to say about this one, so remember, the spirit in your glass isn't running from you. Take your time, sip it, enjoy it. You'll be better for it, as will we all. Everyone, have a good afternoon.